If you want to talk about ghosts, then who are you going to call? Well, you should actually probably call Dan Aykroyd. His fascination with the paranormal started because his great-grandfather was a spiritualist who held seances. Turns out there's a whole book called History of Ghosts written by Dan's dad, and it's about mediumship and his interest in it. He was the reviewer of all these psychic acts who came through town. He was associated with the Lily Dale community in New York, where you can go and get a reading from a registered psychic, and that got passed on throughout the family. They wanted to know what was going on. They wanted to know how levitation was possible, how ectoplasm is possible. Well, that all checks. The story of Mark and his family's eerie encounter with a cursed Ouija board infested home in Australia started off subtle, like their dog's reluctance to enter the house, originally dismissed as a mere adjustment to the new environment. But then, as things do, they escalated. Let's see, there was the mysterious flooding in the laundry room, shattered light bulbs, an overwhelming sense of unease in certain areas of the house that signaled something far more sinister. Disembodied laughter, shuffling feet, and phantom voices only intensified their torment. As the supernatural disturbances grew unbearable, the family decided to take action. The mom's brave confrontation with the paranormal, reading Bible verses aloud, was met with the spirit's fury, resulting in potential poltergeist activity. The peak of this terrifying tale came when the youngest member of the family miraculously survived a fall from an open window. This event was the final straw, prompting them to flee the cursed house without looking back. Burari, a nondescript neighborhood in the Indian capital of Delhi, attained notoriety after 11 members of the Chundawat family were found dead inside their home, amid whispers of occult practices. So police say 10 of them were dangling from the ceiling, and their hands were tied behind their backs, and their eyes and mouths were covered with cloth. And police have zeroed in on one of the men in the family, one Lalit Chundawat. So documents and phones that were recovered from the house hinted at Lalit's interest in spirits and ghosts. Police believe he frequently visited crematoriums, obsessively watched paranormal content, and notes found in one of the diaries hint at a strong belief that supernatural forces would intervene and save the family. And apparently it motivated the family to do what they did. The notes in the diaries laid out exactly how the family needed to carry out this act before they were to have been saved. And it looks like a lot of these instructions were carried out. These notes also refer to Thursday or Sunday as the chosen days, and police believe the deaths occurred between late Saturday night and early Sunday morning. The diaries listed out that the family needed to cover their eyes and mouths with a cloth during the ritual, and that's where we're going to end that because I'm not telling you how to do this. One night, Lorraine Warren received a voicemail from a Mrs. Sandy Foster, who nervously described a very distressing situation and begged the Warrens to return her call. Although it was 12:40 in the morning, Lorraine immediately tried to call her back, and while the phone rang, the connection wouldn't connect. The next day, Ed and Lorraine made the decision to go pay the Fosters a visit, just to be safe. Well, Mrs. Foster brought up that her daughter Meg had been really interested in the occult, and had actually purchased a book on conjuring as a gift for her daughter. And based off the description of it, I think it was a copy of the Ars Goetia. The family described a plethora of instances of demonic activity, and Lorraine herself experienced an inhuman presence throughout the home. So Ed told the family he and Lorraine could handle everything, but hey, maybe just get out of the house for a little bit while we do what we gotta do. So they got to work the moment the Fosters left. They were determined to discover the true nature of the spirit's presence in order to dispel it. After a lot of work, they managed to do so, but not without a struggle. Bob Smith's fascination with this seemingly innocent painting turned into a haunting mystery when a kitchen fire devastated his grandmother's house, leaving only the painting unscathed. The eerie connection deepened when Bob later learned that the very same painting had caused similar tragedies in other households. Giovanni Bragalin's series of paintings, of which The Crying Boy was a part of, became notorious. In 1985, the Sun newspaper in the UK published a shocking account of May and Ron Hall, whose home was consumed by fire with only the cursed painting surviving unharmed. And what's truly unsettling is the firefighter's claim that he had witnessed multiple house fires where everything was reduced to ashes except for copies of The Crying Boy. The widespread reports of similar incidents fueled the belief in the painting's curse, leading to a wave of fear and destruction. Ultimately, the Sun's bonfire of these paintings marked the end of their popularity, but a few copies still linger, carrying with them the ominous aura of the inexplicable. A doll originally belonging to Robert Eugene Otto, an artist, was described as eccentric once upon a time. Neighbors of Robert used to hear him having a conversation with the doll, and this continued into his adult years. He brought the doll everywhere. He talked about it in the first person, as if it wasn't a doll, as if Robert was his own being. Well, the doll remained stored in the Otto family home until Robert the human passed away in 1974. After his death, a couple bought the house, and their daughter found the doll in the attic, and she claimed that the doll was trying to kill her. So the family got rid of it. The doll is now on display in a museum in Key West, and don't worry, the doll still curses people. His last caretaker before the museum experienced him disappear and reappear as he pleased. They heard footsteps, they heard giggling in the attic. Some folks even claim that Robert's expression changes when anybody badmouths Otto in his presence. He's also been responsible for a couple of car crashes, some divorces, broken bones, so go near him at your own risk. Famed AEW wrestler Malachi Black has a fascination with the occult because he grew up in a household that had some very disturbing and interesting things. So he knows how to create these cult-like characters on TV because, well, he grew up with it. He understands it. It was something that had a great influence on him because his grandfather would tell him incredible stories about, and well, once again folks, we're gonna get bizarre here. He would tell him stories about things that he witnessed with black magic in Malaysia. There was a type of voodoo that they used that was called guna guna, and the grandfather got involved with that. He saw it happening around the camps. Things were strung up and soldiers were sick and they couldn't find what was going on. And the villagers were like, oh, he's being subjected to this voodoo, which kind of sparked Malachi's interest. When he was growing up, he was exposed to a lot of perhaps strange things, but it really shaped his mind into questioning everything and looking at the world very differently than a lot of folks. And it made for a very interesting upbringing. He said there was a lot of difficult moments and a lot of very, very difficult growing up, very disconnected moments. It was definitely not your run-of-the-mill upbringing, but it was interesting. One night, very late at night, Ed and Lorraine Warren were contacted by the Snedeker family, who had just moved into a house on Meriden Avenue in Southington. Specifically, the mother of the family unit and a niece who came to stay with the family were on the phone. And what they found and bought, they were like, oh yeah, we had this new home. It's big and welcoming. Turns out it was a former funeral home. And the morticians at that funeral home were involved in naughty things with the dead. The sons of this new family, they were the first to start talking about the things they had seen and experienced. They were terrified. And at first the parents were like, come on guys. But these boys were so scared they were sleeping on the floor in the living room. The women who called the Warrens were terrified. They were hiding in a small bedroom in the back of the house, and the covers on the bed around them were levitating like there was a fan blowing them around. And Lorraine said that while they were on the phone, even more bizarre events started happening. The mother had rosary beads in her hand, and while she spoke, the beads were actually being pulled apart and falling to the floor. A blessing of the house seemed to do nothing to calm things down. The church eventually sent an exorcist, which seemed to do the trick, but not before one last hurrah from whatever was doing all this chaos. So there was this huge tree in front of the house, right? And half of the tree, with no wind, broke off and fell on the property. Yeah, I'd be hightailing it out of there after that. In the chilling case of the Perron family, their seemingly serene farmhouse in Rhode Island concealed a dark and malevolent secret. Soon after moving in, strange occurrences were unraveling, initially dismissed as minor inconveniences. Brooms moved on their own. The young daughters were seeing apparitions. Carolyn Perron, determined to uncover the truth, delved into the history of the house and discovered a lineage plagued by mysterious and tragic deaths spanning 8 generations. The most ominous presence of that was of Bathsheba Sherman. Bathsheba's malevolent intentions became evident as the family's life spiraled into a nightmare. One harrowing incident involved Carolyn experiencing an inexplicable puncture wound on her calf, resembling a large sewing impalement. This unsettling occurrence was just one of many tormenting episodes endured by the Perron family over their decade-long residency in the house, known as the Old Arnold Estate. Now the Warrens were summoned to help because who else? And they identified a mysterious box, which they believed acted as a conduit for Bathsheba's demonic energy to afflict the household. So they performed their blessings, they removed the malevolent object, and lived to tell the tale. Patty Donovan's innocent curiosity led her down a treacherous path when she engaged with a Ouija board, believing she'd found a friend through the board. And as she grew emotionally dependent on this entity, the malevolent spirit, once her confidant, turned into a demonic force, wreaking havoc on her entire family. It targeted their vehicles, it disassembled engines, it punctured tires. Things escalated. We're talking crazy vandalism around the home, inexplicable damage to the property, to the point of levitating furniture, rocks raining down in the house. Father Ted Donovan's desperation led him to seek help from Ed and Lorraine Warren. So upon their arrival, they knew right away there was some malevolence, and they found out about the Ouija board. So they realized, okay, this is bad, and they initiated the process for an exorcism, which sadly took a month to be granted. So during that time, the family endured more torment and destruction at the hands of the entities. Finally, exorcism takes place, liberating the family from their demonic ordeal. But they're left with a substantial financial burden because, well, extensive damage.
Let's dive into the dark and mysterious world of the Borgias, one of Italy's most infamous families during the Renaissance. Rodrigo Borgia rose to power by becoming Pope Alexander VI, now not through piety, but by using bribery, manipulation, and crafty alliances. His children, Cesare and Lucrezia, were equally known for their rumored involvement in all kinds of secretive schemes, including poisoning their political enemies. Yeah, talk about family fun day. Let's go poison some people. The Borgias' reign became a symbol of corruption within the Catholic Church, where moral lines were blurred in the pursuit of power. But with every move came new enemies, of course. That's how history and everything works. So imagine a pope using a sacred position for political gain. That never happens, right? That's never happened in the history ever. Number 9, the Yamadas. Travel to feudal Japan. We find the Yamada family, known as fierce samurai warlords during the turbulent Sengoku period. Now, this was an era when loyalty and alliances were always shifting, and the Yamadas played it well for a time. They rose to power through strategic alliances and fearless tactics on the battlefield. That was their play. They would just cut everyone up. But with every rise comes resistance, and the Yamadas soon found themselves in a web of betrayal and infighting. Rival clans sought to destroy them, and eventually internal strife tore them apart. Yeah, they were all betrayed. They were gotta watch your back, right? Was it the unforgiving nature of feudal Japan that caused their downfall, or could the Yamada family have maintained their power if they had remained united on the inside? Number 8, the Ptolemies. One of the oldest families on this list, going back to 300 BCE. The Ptolemies ruled Egypt after Alexander the Great's empire fractured, but their reign was filled with more drama than dance moms. I mean, it was really crazy back then. Sibling rivalry took on a whole new meaning, with brothers and sisters plotting against each other for the throne, Game of Thrones style, you know? Cleopatra, the last of the Ptolemaic dynasty, famously aligned herself with Julius Caesar and later Mark Antony in a bid to secure her reign. But family betrayals and internal power struggles weakened the dynasty over time. How much of their downfall was due to strategic missteps, and how much was simply a case of family drama spiraling out of control? Sounds like a family Monopoly night. Everyone's just mad at each other, yelling. That's a McWater's Monopoly night right there. Number 7, the Tudors. The Tudors are one of Britain's most famous dynasties, and for good and bad reasons. Henry VIII's desperation for a male heir led to the of 2 wives, not to mention his monumental decision to break away from the Catholic Church. He was doing things a bit different back then. They have a whole musical about the, you've seen it. His daughter, Mary I, got that, Mary nickname. That was because of her persecution of Protestants, while his other daughter, Elizabeth I, brought about the golden age of England. Very different young ladies there. Did the Tudors' relentless pursuit of power justify their ruthless actions, or were they simply products of their time navigating in these harsh political landscapes? I mean, to be fair, it probably was hard growing up with, that guy as your dad, so can't blame them too much here. Number 6, the Romanovs. For over 300 years, the Romanovs ruled Russia with an iron grip, but their dynasty met a tragic and sudden end during the Russian Revolution. Tsar Nicholas II's reign was marked by poor decision-making, particularly during World War I, which led to widespread unrest and dissatisfaction. The revolutionaries saw the Romanovs as a symbol of the old oppressive regime, and in 1917, the entire family was imprisoned, and then later they were as a group. Their downfall remains one of history's most dramatic moments, and yeah, I can agree with that, absolutely. Let's move on. Number 5, the Habsburgs. The Habsburg family was one of Europe's most powerful dynasties, controlling vast territories that spanned from Austria to Spain, everywhere, you name it. Their strategy for maintaining power included arranged marriages within the family to preserve their bloodline, but this also, of course, led to health issues like the infamous Habsburg jaw. Now, despite their impressive empire, their obsession with power and purity led to frequent wars and revolts, eventually contributing to the collapse of their reign. Yeah, that's what happens when your family, each other. So something's gonna get weird down the road. Jaw's gonna get a little bit messy, right? That's science. Number 4, the Sforzas. The Sforzas were a military family who gained control of Milan through sheer force and cunning alliances. They became the city's rulers, but their grip on power was, of course, never secure, as are any of the grips in this list. Top 10 grips. Betrayals, warfare, and constant power struggles defined their rule, with enemies always plotting to bring them down. There's always those shifty fellows in the bushes looking up at you, plotting. Their reign ended in turmoil, weakened by internal conflicts and rivalries. The Sforzas were doomed by their reliance on brutal methods, and they also could have maintained control had they focused on more diplomatic solutions. So, I don't know, maybe a little less violence, a little more talky-talky might save a few things. Number 3, the Rothschilds. The Rothschild family is one of the most influential banking dynasties in Europe, amassing extraordinary wealth and power. These guys were rich, okay? When you're rich, you can do pretty much anything you want, depending on the time period. Their financial prowess was unmatched, but with great power came great rumors rumors and conspiracy theories. Many speculated that the Rothschilds were secretly controlling world events from the shadows, like, you know, Illuminati style, right? Someone's gonna pause that right there and I'm gonna get canceled. However, despite their whispers, their legacy in banking and philanthropy remains strong, so we haven't cracked it just yet. Are the stories about their hidden power based on reality, or are they just the product of envy and suspicion? I'm gonna say a little bit of both. Number 2, the Kennedys. The Kennedys are often referred to as America's royal family, right? But their story is filled with both triumph and tragedy. From John F. Kennedy and Robert Kennedy to the many personal misfortunes that the families faced, their legacy is often overshadowed by the so-called Kennedy curse. Now, despite this, the family's influence in politics and culture remains undeniable. Is the Kennedy curse real, or is this just a series of unfortunate events that we've looked too hard into? I mean, who was that guy with the umbrella, right? Did we ever crack that? Who was that man? You don't need an umbrella, it's a sunny day. And finally, number 1, the Bonapartes. Napoleon Bonaparte's rise from a military general to emperor of France was honestly the stuff of legends. Great movie also, Joaquin Phoenix, so good. After crowning himself emperor in 1804, Napoleon expanded his empire, placing his family members in position of power across Europe. However, his ambition was his undoing. They would call him like the little king or something, or like little man or something. I mean, would you really want to piss a guy off like this? No, okay? Following a series of military defeats, most notably at the Battle of Waterloo, his empire eventually crumbled and the Bonaparte family's influence never fully recovered. Napoleon's unquenchable thirst for power eventually led to his downfall, and his empire was always destined to collapse under its own weight. It was just a matter of when. Stop calling him like a short king or something. Like, it's Napoleon Bonaparte, and people online will still be like, he was short. It's like, he was Napoleon Bonaparte. Are you kidding? Can't win. Those are some terrible families. Comment down below if we missed anyone, and we'll see you next time on BumbleBee. I'm Taylor McWaters. Bye. BumbleBee. That's how I warm up every shift. Come in, I go, BumbleBee.